the engineering firm, the consultant, they're under a ton of pressure.
Until you get like a swath of projects underneath your belt, you just haven't been exposed to the different types of problems that arise.
Sometimes that information can be overwhelming that you're pulling down offline and you're not really even sure what to do with it and what it all means.
We're like, oh, if we only would have been asked this question, this would look a lot different.
There is a need in our industry that we serve right now for some group of people, us in this case, to step up and be the experts when it comes to custom equipment, power distribution, switchgear, UPS systems, transformers.
I agree. One of our number one jobs is to answer that email, answer that phone call, and engage with those engineers, consultants, etc., to provide them the knowledge that we have, the industry experience that we have, the mistakes that we've seen, etc., to have those conversations as early as possible to support them as the best that we can.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
agree.
Definitely. The engineering firm, the consultant, these are the guys that are putting together the specifications and the plans for all of these different projects that we're working on. And, you know, you've engaged with these engineers and the consultants, and you understand they're under a ton of pressure. They're just like everybody in our industry. They have significant workload, and they have challenges that arise. What are some of the ways that we've been able to help these different individuals out?
Yeah, for sure. To your point, like the challenges that arise for them or just the scope of work that they have to do for the end user, for the customer, is pretty significant. So, you know, they're tapping different resources, us being one of them, of course, when it comes to transformers, switchgear, UPS systems, to help them, you know, provide information when it comes to sizing appropriately, delivery requirements, making sure that fit and function, that the equipment work for them too. But yeah, again, like the amount of equipment that they have to deal with on these projects, and like the thoughtfulness that they have to have. How does A play with B and C and so on? So we're part of that, to where we're gonna help make sure that the project's successful.
Totally. It's a job I actually wouldn't want to have. I mean, to your point, they're kind of called on to be experts, if you will, in all of these different disciplines with all of this different specialty equipment. And one of the things that we're seeing in our industry is, you know, just a significant knowledge gap. There's been a huge amount of people who've retired. When I first started working in this industry, like if you truly had an answer or if you truly had a question about something technical, there was some guys who had been in the industry for a long time that were industry experts that could tell you anything you wanted to know about transformers and switchgear. As those individuals have retired, and we've got younger guys moving into the discipline, into that electrical engineering role, there's in some cases there's a knowledge gap there, right? And some of the firms are doing an excellent job to train and bring up that next generation of electrical engineer and consultant. But in a lot of cases now it's flipped, right? Where we used to count on the engineering community to be the experts on everything. Now they're really looking for us to partner with them and, you know, not necessarily do what they're called to do, but to come alongside of them and help them and give them the answers that they need. You know, in our case, as it relates to us, UPS is transformers and switchgear.
Until you get like a swath of projects underneath your belt and you've been doing this for X amount of years, you just haven't been exposed to the different types of problems that arise, that even though on paper or through conversation you're trying to think of all of the issues, think of all of the gotcha types of things, but when you have years of experience, decades of experience, you know, Zhang Agency's been doing this for so long. That's why we're a trusted resource to the newer engineers and the established engineers, because of those reasons. You know, again, we've seen so much, we've done so much, we've been a part of different types of projects. So I would like to think that we're one of the early calls, one of the early engagements as the engineers, the consultants are doing their homework on a project.
It seems we're getting more and more inquiries, for information, requests for information from new people that honestly we've never even met before in some cases, new electrical engineers, and they're looking for information, they're, to your point, they've been pointed to us as a resource for transformer, switchgear, and UPS systems, and a lot of times it's you can pull down the information off of a website, but it's hard to understand sometimes if you haven't been doing it for years or decades, or if you haven't made those mistakes and learned along the way. Sometimes that information can be overwhelming that you're pulling down offline, and you're not really even sure what to do with it and what it all means. There's no shortage of information out there on the web, prompting AI. There's tons of information that you can get, but really what to do with that information, how to distill it down, and also what's practical, right? A lot of times we can shortcut, and I'm sure you could speak to that. We can shortcut based on our learning curve over the past 3 generations. We can speak to what's practical in a lot of cases.
For sure. The shortcut too made me think of like how often you or I are doing something at home, something personal, and you YouTube it, right? So it's like maybe you have the instructions in front of you, you have a general idea of what you're doing, but you still look up YouTube because there's somebody on the other end of the camera that have done this before. They have the experience, they know the shortcuts, they know the right way to do it, as opposed, or they kind of know the ins and the outs.
Sure.
And again, I'd like to think that that's why we get calls and that's why we get emails. It's sure there's information that can be found on websites, there's information that can be found on paper and manuals, etc. But we've done it, we've taken part of it, and it really just helps expedite and helps sift through a lot of that material.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that resonates with me, right? Like you watch a YouTube video of a guy fixing his sink or whatever at home, and it's like you can read instructions, but then you watch a guy talk about it and everything clicks. And right, that's exactly what's going on in our industry too. They're taking all this information in, but really what they need to do is just have a conversation with somebody who can expedite their process of learning.
And that's what helps us connect the dots, I think, that much more for the engineers, the consultants, because we've seen the projects from start to finish. So we've talked to the installing contractors on any installation hurdles that they've seen over the years. So then we're able to kind of communicate some of that information on the front end, whatever information is pertinent on the front end, to those engineers and consultants. So hopefully to get ahead of those and just create a better experience for the installing contractors and ultimately a nice product for the end user.
One of the things that we've, is obvious, goes without saying, right, is just like speed to market and the construction process and how long it is today, which is kind of exasperated by, a long lead time for design, but then also the procurement process is lengthy today, and bidding processes are lengthy. And then when everybody is eventually ready to actually cut purchase orders to order equipment, lead times are long, approval process is long. And so what we've been seeing in the industry is definitely a trend more and more to prefabricate, right? They've been talking about prefabrication in construction for 20, 30 plus years, but I feel like now we're actually seeing this happen. And so like we've had a couple of cases and we're working on some different projects right now where customers are trying to do exactly that, right? They're trying to shorten the amount of time that they're going to spend building in installing equipment.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it takes a lot of variables out where they can, because of all the length of that process on the front end, then they can still do multiple things on site, but offload some of that work to strategic partners to keep up with that timeline, or to maybe make up time on the back end.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think in a lot of cases, you've got a lot of different contractors and a lot of different engineers and a lot of different people getting into new projects, like because the market there's so much demand for electrical equipment. And so there's people who are doing UPS projects and medium voltage switchgear and transformer projects, you know, sometimes for the first time ever. And so they want to hear from us. We've been selling this type of equipment for 3 generations. They want to understand, like, hey, what can you guys tell us? Like, what are some of the gotchas that we should know along the way, right? Like, we can't tell them exactly how to install the project or install the UPS or the transformer, but certainly we can offer some advice. And hey, here's some things that we've seen some of the more seasoned guys do some tricks or some shortcuts or some different techniques that they've used to kind of shorten that construction period. And again, there's a significant push to have equipment show up to job sites and be ready to be connected, right? They don't want to be unwrapping and unpacking and wiring. They want it to show up, take it off the truck, set it on the pad, and connect it, right? And we've seen a lot of that.
Yeah, for sure. And then you get the situations where maybe they're putting together a list of equipment that maybe doesn't marry super well. So then maybe in the field, then they're running into a problem where, hey, this gear was only designed for rear access.
Absolutely.
Now what are we going to do? And we've seen that to where then we had to come up with the solution, help the installing contractor run cable appropriately, still kind of come up with again, like a deviation from what was designed. And it was just something that, because of a lot of the nuances, the different dynamics of the project, just, the time demand behind the project as well, just was a hurdle that nobody had seen earlier on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you're talking about there is back to what we were speaking about earlier. It's just the sheer volume of work that the consultant community has, and the electrical contractor has. They have so many demands on them now. And I feel like, roll back the clock 10 years ago, 20 years ago, there was a ton of effort put into making sure when that piece of equipment showed up, it was exactly what everybody wanted. It fit perfectly. It wired perfectly. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen today. It does, right? There are certain projects where it absolutely demands that level of precision. But I do think that we're seeing more and more projects show up where they're designed, to a close enough kind of approach where we're going to figure that out on site. And that's creating a lot of questions and is driving a lot of inquiries from the contractor community and even the consultant community, because they want to know, like, hey, how are we going to make this work when it gets on site, right? And then that's a little bit of what you're speaking to.
For sure. I mean, going back to those points where you said there was more time 10 years ago to go through that. But now when lead times have doubled or tripled or fluctuate, from quarter to quarter, it's just more difficult to plan like that. So then those things come up. I always appreciate when engineers and consultants reach out to us early on a project. It's nice to get involved early, right? So that we can have those conversations, have the dialogue, provide the experience that we have, inside these doors, to make sure, or to be part of a successful project, right? Because how many times have you seen it the other way, where maybe we didn't get that call, we didn't see that email, but we saw the request for the equipment later on,
right?
And we're like, oh, if we only would have been asked this question, this would look a lot different.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think that's the number one thing, for the consultant community, for us to help the consultant community and the engineers out there. The sooner you engage with us, the more that we can help you and the more seamless we can make the whole construction project. We have a ton of resources, and I'm not just talking about documents, but I'm talking about people, at vendors and at manufacturers who are absolute experts in their field, whether it's switchgear, transformers, UPS systems, batteries. We know all these people from our years of experience, and the sooner that we can connect the electrical engineers and the consulting community to those resources so that they can streamline conversations and learning and help get their design as close to accurate as possible up front. Obviously, that's one way that we can certainly help that community. It's interesting. Some of these projects that we work on, like, literally take decades to unroll, right? My dad speaks to this a lot, right? He's got projects on his desk that he's been budgeting and offering information to different engineers and consultants for over a decade. And sometimes it just really takes these projects that long to unfold. So I would say to our engineering community, it's never too early to reach out to us. Like, contact us even when it's a conceptual type of situation, it's budgetary. When dimensions are just rough and approximate, feel free to reach out to us. The sooner you engage with us, the sooner we can really help you guys out.